gratitude meditation this morning. So we start our meditation out by just gently closing our eyes or finding a spot to gently focus your gaze upon. And just draw in the deep cleansing breath, the breath of divine love and gratitude. And gently exhale. Just begin to allow the chair to support you. Your feet firmly rooting you to Mother Earth. Let's breathe in another deep cleansing breath. Gently exhale. And I invite you to silently repeat the following gratitude affirmations after me. I am grateful in this moment. Allow yourself to feel the gratitude as we silently say these affirmations. I am powerful. I achieve anything I set my heart to achieve. I joyfully embrace each and every day with gratitude. I am love, happiness, and joy. I gratefully create the reality I love. I live in a state of gratitude. And as we enter into the silence, I invite you to do more than say the words. Allow yourself to feel each moment of gratitude as we enter into the silence. And as you begin to bring your awareness back to this present moment, wiggling the fingers and the toes, you carry with you these feelings of gratitude. Carry with you the knowledge when you leave here today that you are that gratitude. And in that gratitude, you acknowledge your oneness with the divine. Gently repeat to yourself, I am gratitude. And so it is. And thank you. That one was hard for me to not get up and play the air guitar. That would have been really embarrassing too, but anyway. Maybe more embarrassing for you all to say my minister plays the air guitar. So I was noticing something on TV yesterday and all last week, and the holiday movies have started. Mindy and I did away with our cable a couple of years ago, but around this time every year we have to subscribe on our Roku to the Hallmark channel, so we've been getting a lot of that. But they do have a good theme, because typically the theme, although they're a little cheesy in these movies, they all tend to have the theme of gratitude, right? And something that everybody's thankful for. So they have a good lesson behind them if you could just plow through the cheesiness. So I invite you to try that this season. But speaking of gratitude, the great 13th century German mystic Meister Eckhart once said, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Acts 24:3 of the Bible says, in every way and everywhere we accept this with all gratitude. And Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. Now, it was said that he often practiced gratitude with his feet. For instance, he'd take a step with his right foot, and he would say thank you. And he would take a step with his left foot, and he would say thank you. And he would repeat this process over and over, just allowing himself to feel the gratitude with each step and in the present moment. Now, like most people, I probably use the words thank you quite often. I probably use it more than I realize just in my everyday conversation. For instance, even I'll ask my wife, Mindy, to hand me a pen or something. She hands it to me and I say thank you. But sometimes, though, I wonder how automatic that response of thank you has become. How conditioned I often am to say the words. And I remember my parents teach me when I was a kid to say thank you. Somebody would hand me something or do something for me, and my mom would look at me and say, "What do you say?" And I would say thank you. She never said, how do you feel right now? It was always, what do you say? Thank you. But I wonder how it would be if I started saying thank you, not out of a conditioned response, but truly with meaning. And to actually not even just say the words, but begin to feel it as well. To feel that gratitude when I say the words thank you. Or feel it with conviction. Now, we're about to celebrate Thanksgiving and other holidays where gratitude and others, like those movies, the gratitude's just floating around in the air. But it doesn't have to just happen during special occasions. It seems kind of like we use the special occasions as an excuse, but why do we have that? Why can't we do it all the time? Gratitude is one of those things that we can actually implement into our daily spiritual practice. And it's something that we can tune into as we move throughout our day, regardless of the season. So I recently read a story that I wanted to share. Now, according to Arabic legend, a young man was roaming the desert, and he comes across a spring of crystal clear water. And the water was so delicious that he reaches down and he starts to fill his leather canteen with this water. And he fills it to the brim so he can take some back to the tribal elder who had been his teacher. Now, after a 4-day journey, he's going 4 days with this water in the leather canteen, and he offers the water to the elder. The elder takes a deep drink, he smiles, and he thanks his former student for the excellent water. The young man returns home. He's like, I did a good thing. He returns home and his heart's happy. But later, the elder hands the canteen to another student, lets him taste the water. And the other student spits it out and says, gosh, that's terrible. So apparently over the 4 days of him carrying around in that canteen, the water had become stale and it was no longer tasty. So the student challenges his teacher, Master, the water was awful. Why did you pretend to like it? And the teacher replies, you only tasted the water, whereas I tasted the gift. So the water was simply the container for an act of loving kindness. So as we can see here, gratitude is something that extends beyond just to whatever it is that someone has given us. It becomes more of a practice when we view the world and our experiences in it through a different lens, and perhaps even into a different way of being in the world. And it can extend far beyond the holidays and any other types of special occasions. So professor, author, and speaker, someone that you may have heard of in Unity before, Brené Brown, she stated, I don't have to chase extraordinary moments to find happiness. It's right in front of me if I'm paying attention and practicing gratitude. So wait, am I standing here telling you all that you can be happy simply by practicing gratitude? Yes, I am. I'm glad I found some people that agreed. Yes. I am proclaiming that gratitude does that, and it does a lot more for us. Milk isn't the only thing that does a body good. Gratitude also does a body good along with mind and soul as well. Implementing a practice of gratitude can begin to change our lives and to change it in profound ways. So one of these reasons, or one of the ways gratitude does this, is that it begins to shift our focus. One of the things you may have learned through spiritual studies is that, especially here in Unity, we talk about whatever we focus on is what we get back in our lives. For instance, if I'm focusing on something such as lack, I'm likely to wake up and realize, heck, I've got lack in my life. Whereas if we focus on gratitude, we're going to get back more gratitude and more happiness in our lives as well. So this makes me think of one of my best friends, and he's one of those guys who always seems to have it together. I mean, this guy could walk out in the middle of a hurricane and be smiling. Wind blowing him over, blowing his house down, and he's like, all right. He's just always one of those happy guys. He sees the silver lining in everything. But he's currently serving in the Foreign Service, and one of his first assignments became dangerous. And he received a call at work one day telling him to not return home because the embassy had threats, and it just wasn't safe for him to go home. So he calls me up, he's like, I'm having to move. I'm not even able to go back home and get my stuff. And I was like, well, are you worried? He goes, not at all. I'm getting my stuff moved for free, and I'm getting a great new apartment. Sees the silver lining in everything. But he gives us a good example that it's all about how we shift our focus, depending on this, even despite the circumstance. And all of us can learn to do this. We've all got it ingrained inside of us already. We all have the ability, but like anything, it takes practice. We don't get out and learn to throw, a 100-yard pass without practice. Well, I don't know if we can all do that, but the quarterbacks, the Green Bay Packers, they can't throw a 100-yard pass without practice. But words have exceptional power. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about right now is our words. And one way in which we can put our words out there is through active writing. Our words can help us learn to focus on gratitude through the act of writing. And I challenge you to do this, and I know you've likely been challenged before. People are like, write it down, write it down. But there's a reason. It's because it works. So I'm going to invite you again today, write it down. You can write down 5 things you're grateful for, 3 things, 1 thing. You don't have to be like Anne Rice and have a literary degree. I don't care if you write it down in crayon. At the end of every day, I invite you to write down at least 1 thing that you are grateful for in your life. And don't just stop at writing it down and shoving it under the bed and never looking at it again. Write it down and reread whatever it is you wrote. Reread what it is that you wrote down that you are grateful for. Close your eyes and allow yourself to feel that gratefulness. Feel it coursing through your veins as you stare at it on that piece of paper and as you close your eyes. Feel it coursing through your cells and throughout your entire body and into your consciousness. Visualize it pouring over you. And don't just do it this one night and let it go. Make it a practice. Studies have shown that it can take at least 21 days to begin to develop a habit, whether it's a good habit or something we call a bad habit. Let's use the next 21 days to create a good habit and a practice of gratitude. The second way gratitude can help us change and help raise our consciousness is that gratitude brings more happiness into our life. Sorry, I'm sitting here thinking of food, so some of my talk may be kind of all over today. My stomach's growling. But anyway. Now, 2 psychologists, Dr. Robert A. Emmons from the University of California and Dr. Michael E. McCullough from the University of Miami, these 2 professors committed a lot of their times towards conducting research to study the effects of gratitude. And in one such study, the researchers asked one group of people to write down something that they were grateful for every day. Then they had the second group, they instructed them to write down things that made them unhappy every day. And then they used a third group and they were like, don't really focus on something that makes you happy or sad, just write something down. And I guess you can imagine what the results were. At the end of the study, the group that was instructed to write down the things that made them happy every day became far more happier and optimistic about their lives than the group that just wrote down something that was indifferent or something that didn't make them happy. And regardless, it's just so much easier to go through your day when you're feeling that gratitude. Gratitude also reduces fear. Now, this is a really big one. Who doesn't want to reduce? Is there one person in here that doesn't want less fear in their lives? Okay, I was hoping I wouldn't see a hand. But one thing about polar opposite feelings is that they can't share the same space. For instance, if we're feeling gratitude, anger can't get in. But if you're feeling anger, gratitude can't get in. These 2 polar opposites can't share the same space, and I'll give you an instance. So several years ago, I may have been around 14 years old or so, and my mother takes my sister and I to church. Now, we're sitting in the very back row, as we tend to do, and my mother had a really bad morning. Probably my sister and I were acting up or complaining about going to church like we tended to do every single Sunday. But my mom was really upset that specific morning and really having a bad day. So we get to church, and I don't remember what stirred it up, but my sister got what we called the case of the giggles. Now, when she would get the case of the giggles, it would happen at the worst possible moments. It happened once while we were trying to get family pictures taken, and our pictures just looked goofy. We're all, anyway. But let's just say that her case of the giggles was also highly contagious, because she would start, the rest of the family would start. Before long, we were just laughing uncontrollably. But she'd usually start laughing. It was over something small, but we would be unable to stop. So anyhow, this started at church that particular morning. I don't remember what happened, but my sister, she always starts that. She'd go, and she starts off this giggle. And my mother starts nudging her. She's like, be quiet. She's there nudging her. But before long, my mom starts to laugh. So she's back there trying to stifle this laughter in church, and then it hits me. So we're trying to stifle it at this point, and people are starting to turn around and look. Like, what's going on back there, and staring at us? But my mother eventually nudges both of us out of our seats and says, go. So we get outside, and we just double over into laughter. But the main point is in that moment is that my mom's anger was gone. Her anger from that morning and the joy of her laughter were unable to coexist in the same spot, even if it was embarrassing at church. But fear and gratitude work much the same. Fear is one of those things that likes to expand. It likes to be huge, and it likes to take up huge amounts of space. And the more space it has to grow, the more space we give it, the larger it becomes. But the key is that it only has space if we allow it to have that space. We can help prevent it from expanding if we practice gratitude. You knew I was going to say that, didn't you? Gratitude. Gratitude begins to put us in this space of abundance. It helps us to look around and realize the gratitude that we feel right now in this present moment. And notice I said present moment, because what happens when we decide to start live outside the present moment? We can either start to think about the past and think about, well, I should have done this or I should have done that. Or we can start to think about the future and possibly a case of what my mother always calls the what ifs. We're like, oh, what if this happens or what if that happens? And before we know it, our minds start going a mile a minute. Oh no, this might happen. And we begin to feel fear. We're giving it that space and we're allowing it to expand. And before long, it goes out of control and it creates this vicious cycle that we can't get out of. But we aren't there yet. We're not there in the future. The past is gone and we're not there in the future. We're living right here and right now. Nothing is yet written in stone. And at the end of the day, my mother used to always tell me, a lot of those what ifs don't even happen. Then we found out, we look back and we're like, I wasted all that time on the what ifs, allowing myself to feel that fear for no reason. All that time spent on some possible future outcome of something that hasn't even happened yet, or the past, something that we can't change. So right now, I can focus on that I have breath in my body. I can focus on the fact that I have this wonderful job where I get to see you all each Sunday. I have a wonderful wife. I have wonderful dogs. The jury's still out on that one sometimes, but they're good most of the time. I can focus on I have wonderful dogs most of the time. But when I focus my gratitude toward those things, I'm focused on them and on the good in my life and what makes me feel the good in my life. And it leaves no room for fear. There's no room for fear to grow or no room for fear to expand. Now, gratitude also raises our consciousness. Gratitude doesn't just have to be expressed in words. It can also be expressed via feelings. And this one's a little bit difficult to explain, so I want to show you if you're willing to do that. Are you willing to allow me to show you? All right. So I invite you to just close your eyes for just a minute. Let's get kind of comfortable and close your eyes. And think of something that brings you great joy. It can be a person in your life, maybe a pet, even a car, just something that brings you great joy in your life. Now I invite you to think about how it is you feel when you think about this beloved object. And just allow yourself to feel the joy it brings you and the love you feel for it. Allow yourself to feel the gratitude that object or that person brings into your life. And you can now open your eyes. It feels pretty good, doesn't it? I saw some of you with smiles on your faces. When you start feeling that gratitude and that happiness, you leave no room for fear or those yucky feelings. You feel happy and joy. And what happens when we raise our consciousness to this point of gratitude? We attract those things that are also at that higher consciousness. So let's think about it for a moment. Those things that we probably don't like too much, things such as lack that I mentioned earlier, or that feeling of anger or hate, whatever it is, those things are at a lower level of consciousness. We'll say that they're on the floor. They're on the bottom level of consciousness. And they're very much stuck right there. And the good thing about it is that they have no ladder or elevator. Those things are down there, no ladder or elevator to climb. And they can't touch you when you're up at this level of consciousness. So where is it we want to be? Do we want to be down here or do we want to be up here? We want to be up here at this higher level of consciousness. But I'm not going to tell you that it's always easy. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to just flip a switch right here and now and we're going to walk out this level of consciousness. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So I ask you to be patient with yourself and go gentle with yourself. But just know that it is possible and you can do it. Anytime you start to feel that fear niggling at the back of your neck, or fear starting to knock on the door and want to creep in, or any of those other undesirable feelings, go back to what it was that I asked you to think about a little while ago. Whatever you thought about that made you feel gratitude and joy. And close your eyes and just allow yourselves to think about the way that object makes you feel. That feeling that you feel when you think about that object, that is what's going to raise your consciousness from here to here. It is that feeling of gratitude that you have. And I do want to say something else about gratitude. When we walk around in gratitude, we're not walking around in a state of denial. We aren't denying that there are certain things that are affecting our lives in ways that we wish they weren't. We aren't denying a diagnosis of the body, or that perhaps we lost a loved one, or that there's conflict in the world. We're not walking around with our fingers in our ears and our eyes shut. We aren't denying that those things aren't still happening, but we're providing ourselves with almost a dose of a type of resilience. And that resilience is what helps us to be able to take a step back for a moment and to observe the situation from a different perspective. Remember, gratitude raises our consciousness from here to here. A higher consciousness doesn't mean that undesirable things aren't necessarily happening in the world. But when you make it a daily practice in your life to practice gratitude and to raise your consciousness, it helps you to be able to move forward with less fear, with a better understanding, and often the ability to view some of those things that you view a little bit more negative through a different lens. It can also improve your physical health. Going back to fear, what happens when we live in a constant state of being immersed in those things that don't serve us? It also begins to affect the physical body. When we were living in Dallas, Texas, sometimes the traffic would just be really hectic there. The speed limit on one of the main streets going through town was 75 miles an hour. And people in Dallas, Texas like to drive those fancy cars. 75, they're like, I'm going to go 90, be cutting people off. But when we lived there, there was that constant state of fear. I'm like, what if somebody runs me off the road or comes right up on me? And my blood pressure started raising. It can affect the physical body. And say you're looking at me right now and you're like, Evan, I hear you talking about gratitude, but I think you're just completely full of it. There better not be anybody thinking that, but yeah, I figured he would. Well, if you think that, is it going to hurt to at least try it? It's free to try it. It's not going to cost you anything. You don't have to go out and buy all this fancy sports equipment. It's free to try it. And there's nothing to lose except maybe those things that you want to lose, right? Those things that no longer serve your higher good. So let's try something here together. Let's everybody say together, I am grateful. You ready? I am grateful. I think you can do better than that. Let's try it again. Let's try it with feeling. Think about that object that you thought about, that object, that person that you felt grateful for earlier. Think about that and let's try it again. You ready? I am grateful. And one more time, because we want the neighborhood to hear how grateful we are, right? You ready? 1, 2, 3. I am grateful. That's what I like to hear. And we're about to be grateful for Thanksgiving food, so namaste.